Alright, we're going to go ahead and get started with the saddle bracket design. I'm going to go ahead and start this one off with just my standard IPT file and creating a new sketch on the XY plane, so we are parallel with the front view and plane. I'm going to, oops, did not mean to do that. I'm going to go ahead and start with the line. Oh, sorry, my little computer there. I'm going to start just sketching this out, just giving a basic overall sketch of this part before getting too far into this. I don't want to take that down. So I'm just using the constraints that are already here, the parallel, vertical, horizontal. So I'm going to dimension this piece right here. It's 3.25 inch long, and from here to here is 2, and 0.5. That. And the overall height is 1.75. I like to get those larger dimensions on there first because it does help out when you're modifying that sketch. It does come together a little bit easier if you place the larger dimensions first, and hopefully it won't be a struggle between getting your part to move around. So now I'm just tying it back to my origin using the 0 dimension, and let's see what else we've got here. So we've got that 2 inches, half. So apparently when I was sketching that, I did not set those two objects to have the same height. So I need to go back in and make sure that this gets set properly. So that is 1.25. Just looking at the dimensions that I need for this part. Alright, that one would be over constrained. This one should be over constrained because I already have the 0.5 there, 0.5. Alright, that one. And it looks like I'm missing one dimension. What dimension am I missing? That's height. Well, we've got that one. Let's take a look. Just trying to figure out what is that last dimension I'm missing. I've looked at this thing over and over. I've got all of the dimensions I think I need. So I'm just moving on with this. Sometimes this happens like that, and I maybe have missed a constraint somewhere. I'm just trying to go back and make sure that everything, but for the sake of and the length of this video, I'm not going to keep going over this entire drawing. I'm just, I don't know what happened. So I'm going to finish the sketch, and I'm going to go ahead and start the extrusion. Now, the extrusion that we're going to use today, just want you to take a look. We do have several different types or behaviors of the extrusions, and up to this point, we've been flip-flopping between, what side of the work plane we want to extrude to. So today, for this one, we just want the textbook introduces using the symmetric extrude. So this one allows you to split the difference symmetrically between the planes. So if I put in an overall dimension of, I think, what is this one, 2 inches? Oh, sorry, lost the page with the dimension on it. 2.5, 2.5. It's automatically going to divide that 1.25 on each side of the viewing plane. So this is the plane here, and the line of symmetry is going to be on the existing XY plane that we had started with, and it's going to divide that. There is another command while we're here, that the asymmetric plane, that will let you specify distances. So you can have either a distance or a b distance, which allows you to make that piece be asymmetrical, and you can change the values as needed. So we're just going to go back to the keeping this symmetric and hit the OK button, and we'll get our view right there. So that is the beginning of our first part. So as you should have been noticing in your previous drawings that you've been drawing, you will be creating an extrusion over here on the side, and if you hit the plus button, you will have a sketch that goes along with each extrusion. When you click on these two items, you can then modify. You can either right click and go to edit sketch, or you can simply double click on the sketch and it will take you back to the edit mode. So if you need to change a value, you can double click on the dimension and change that value to whatever you need the new value to be, and when you hit finish sketch, it will update that. So that is how we modify existing sketches. I'm just going to undo that so I don't save that. Another thing is, if you don't have this toolbar over here on the right, the toolbars are located under View, and go to the User Interface, and the Model Browser button right there, that toggles that on and off. So if you ever lose that, and chances are at some point in time, if you're working with Inventor, sometimes it just gets closed, or sometimes you accidentally hit the X button. So you just need to think about View. The screen of what you're looking at is a visual thing. So look under View, and then User Interface, and then Browser, Model Browser. And you can always Google it if you forget, because it's a common thing to happen, and you need to make sure you know how to get that model browser back on. So that's important. So on page 4-9, the textbook introduces another way of creating a sketch. So if you don't always have to come up and click on that Start 2D Sketch. You can right click on your surface and either start a new sketch, or if you accidentally pick the wrong surface and you want to see what other surfaces you can start a sketch on, click Select Other, and then the face right here will face, and extrusion. These will let you pick another geometry in order to start that sketch. With that bottom surface selected, you now have an icon that's popping up here where you can edit the extrusion, you can edit a sketch, you can share a sketch, you can make sketch visible, or you can create a new sketch. So now that I have the bottom of this part selected, I'm going to create a new sketch, and that's where I'm going to start the next solid surface. So we're going to add a circle. I'm going to move my pointer until I see that little green dot appear on that line. That is picking the midpoint of that line, and I'm going to pull my circle over to the end point of that line. So that's going to give me the surface in which I'm ready to extrude. So I'm going to right click now to finish my 2D sketch. So right clicking will also give you the finished 2D sketch, which is the same as clicking up here, which is finish sketch. So this is a little bit easier to access when you get familiar with what you're doing, and it's right there and it's visible. So let's go to extrude. We're going to extrude half of that semicircle there, and we're going to change the direction. So this time I want to click on the 2, and it's asking me to specify a face. So you can either specify like the distance, or you can actually specify a face. So if I pick this face right here, one thing that is good is that anytime this dimension changes, so will this extrusion. So if I had specified a specific distance, like let's say 1/4 of an inch, and then I go back and I modify the thickness of this original sketch 1 and extrusion 1, that would then make me have to go back and change this. So there's like what we call a parent-child relationship that exists. So keeping with our extrusions that are relative to other surfaces instead of just dimensions all the time, it's a good practice to get into. So let me just show you an example of that. So I'm going to just go back and edit this sketch right here. So when you edit a sketch, remember that normally you see just the little plus button there. If you click on that and go back to your sketch 1 and double click, if I change this to 0.75, there we go. So those are in relationship to each other. So now that piece changed along with the original sketch. So they have a relationship because I extruded it, and I extruded this surface in relationship to that surface. I'm going to go back and redo this a little bit. So right here, if I were to extrude this, and instead of using the surface, and I just said 0.5, okay, so that gives me the same item. If I go back now and make a modification to sketch 1, so make that 0.75. Sorry about that. I should have done a little bit better with my constraints when I got started. So there's the disconnect. So we had a dimension specified here that did not have any relationship to the original part. So this would now require me to go back and change this. So for a part like this small, it doesn't make a big deal, but when you start designing into multiple complex parts, and you have one dimension change, and then you continue to build these parent-child relationships with sketches where you have one surface, is going to be dependent on something else. If something else changes, you want to make sure that those surfaces or those relationships still exist. So it's a good habit to get into looking at these relationships. As you're designing just these parts and redrawing, probably that's not going to make a difference, but as you get into the working world and you're designing stuff and you're moving dimensions and changing things as you're drawing, that's when those problems start to exist. So it's good to just start learning about these relationships and these surfaces and features and things like that when you're tying them together. It does make a difference. So just kind of keep those things in mind. So I'm going to go back to this right now and, oops, too far back. And I'm going to just finish that sketch again and make sure that I have that extrusion. And I want to extrude this, and I want to make sure that it has to that surface right there. So I'm going to leave that right there, and that should wrap up that part to this point.